Welcome back.
Welcome.
This is a podcast.
Toys from a galaxy far, far away.
And tonight we're going to be reviewing a action figure from 1996 or 7.
It should say on his foot or somewhere. If you can see it.
98.
98. Now that was toward the end of the Power of the Force 2, I think. Is that a Power of the Force 2?
I believe so. And it's actually, it doesn't have the best articulation, but it is a pretty well constructed figure. The arms aren't bulky. His suit's smooth. His body matches how he would look.
Who is this guy?
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Grand Admiral Thrawn.
And that little creature around his neck is actually called a... I have to look it up. I know what it is.
Looks like a baby hut.
It actually neutralizes force abilities around him, and so he actually, I believe, used it against a couple of Jedi Masters that tried to use the force on Thrawn, and Thrawn just...
So, where the heck is your Grand Admiral Thrawn from in the Star Wars universe?
He is from the Chiss Ascendancy, which is this far outer rim society, empire, if you will, and they have a couple of brief mentions. He's actually one of the only Imperial officers that's a different race other than a humanoid. That's at least the Grand Admiral.
But I haven't seen him in any movies.
He's in Rebels.
Yeah, he's in Rebels, and there's a series of books that came out that George Lucas officially endorsed called Heir to an Empire, and he was in those. That was the first time I saw those, which those came out a long time ago. I bought them. There's 3 books, I think, and he was in them, and it was a really good read, really good book set. It had something to do with clones, which I enjoyed because I didn't know, but you can't clone a Jedi because they'll go insane in the books. And it had to do with cloning cylinders, and of course Grand Admiral Thrawn, he was on the edges of the outlands, or what do they call them?
The galaxy, the outer rim.
Unknown
Region.
Unknown regions, and he comes back. If I remember right, he was a master strategist because he would look at a society and be able to deduce their motives by their art, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
He was a cool character.
Very, just his charisma, even when he's... they touched it a little bit on Rebels. Even when he's losing, he's still in charge of the situation.
Yeah.
He doesn't crack under pressure.
Smooth.
He's very relaxed and in control of... There's a scene in Rebels where the rebels steal a bunch of, I think it's Y-Wings or X-Wings, and he says, let them have their prize for now, I'll get them later. And he's very... he's so precise about the way he approaches the situation of, I'm not going to get you today, I'll get you tomorrow. And it's very... There's not, I don't think, a character in Star Wars that matches his...
He's smooth.
He's, smooth. Yeah. He's the opposite of Han Solo.
He's one of those iconic characters. In our previous video, we were talking about canon, and he's actually part of, I guess you would call the expanded universe. Heir to an Empire is where I first heard about him and read the books. And when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they got rid of the expanded universe, but now he's in Rebels. So I think they've taken some of it back by popular demand, I'm sure. Because he's a cool character, and a lot of the fans were not happy about jettisoning a bunch of canon out the airlock, even though it wasn't on film. Now it is, though. Thrawn's on film, well, the animated series, so I think that counts.
And there's been some rumors floating around that he may come back for this next Star Wars movie. Whether or not it's true...
That would be cool as hell. Mr. Abrams, that would be an awesome idea. You put Grand Admiral Thrawn in that movie. Just have a blowout, you know. And then, I mean, if it works, you put some more Star Wars stories together off of this episode 9.
I mean, they have great content to work with. Even if they say it's not canon, they have, even if you don't take every word from, you know, you don't have to put in every character, but there's so many of these expanded universe characters that you could use that are just great material, that have good storylines behind them. And Admiral Thrawn, for example, he's just all around a good character. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, if I remember correctly, there's a little bit of a problem there, because in those same set of books, wasn't Leia and Han's twins in those books? I mean, was it Jason and I can't remember.
Jaina Solo, and I think it's.
I thought it was Jace.
It is. I think it is.
Jace. But that's kind of a problem there, because of the Force Awakens and Ben Solo, unless he's got some twins that we don't know about, which would harken back to Luke and Leia being twins. But anyway, I'm glad that they brought him back. And now about the figure, now I had this figure at one time. I might still have it. I have to look it up, but mine didn't have the creature.
Yeah, luckily I got this.
It's 5 POA, points of articulation, which I like this figure because it's not over muscled like the beginning of the Power of the Force 2.
And his outline and his look is very smooth. It's not, I mean, yeah, it's bendy in the middle, but its legs are a little big.
I mean, it's proportionate, right?
Yeah.
As compared to the ones earlier in that line. And I'm glad they made these figures. I mean, some of these figures they made with a comic book. It came in like a 2-pack. And I've got some of those at IG-88. And of course, you had Chewbacca as a bounty hunter, and Leia Bush, and Bausch Bush. But this is about Grand Admiral Thrawn. That's a really cool figure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd pick him up and that's what bugged me is, as a collector, when Disney first did that, there was a crazy spike in expanded universe figures. It drove me crazy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these figures were, as soon as everyone said everything's out the window and these figures aren't going to be around and the expanded universe isn't.
Yeah, that's another thing. It messed up, didn't it?
And the market skyrocketed. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on this, but I watch a lot of the sales of people. What are people buying? What are people selling? And when I go on there and see, holy crap, people are paying $50 for one figure.
Yeah, I ended up with like Dash Rendar and his Outrider and stuff, which we should probably talk about. I've got almost all those figures around in there, and I mean, it's expanded universe. I wasn't as attached to it, but it's kind of a cool vehicle and a cool character, and I had the swoop bike, and I just think I just held on to him, even though the Force Disney said that's been jettisoned out the airlock. I went ahead and hanged on to them because I thought they were cool.
Yeah.
And maybe they aren't as jettisoned as we thought they were. They may end up being, who knows? I mean, Dash Rendar and Thrawn might be in a major movie. I hope they will be. I mean, they were cool characters.
Yeah.
Why would you get rid of something that was cool? You know? I mean, it adds to it. It doesn't take away. I guess they just wanted to start, fresh for some arrogant reason. I think it's arrogance, but anyway. So, anything else you'd like to add about Grand Admiral Thrawn?
I know they made some new figures of him, which look really good.
Yeah.
Some of them have him more blue. My biggest thing with him was they're a little bit attention to detail. I don't know if you can really tell, but his eyes are like blood red, which is how the Chiss look. Yeah,
that's how he's supposed to look. Even in the books, they described it. And the cover of one of the books showed Grand Admiral Thrawn, a painting of him.
He's kind of in the background with his arms crossed, And it's funny because Darth Vader, I think he was the only person that, I don't know how Thrawn knew, but Thrawn knew of Anakin Skywalker was Darth Vader, and no one else did.
Oh.
And it's just legend stuff. I think it's an all-around good figure, and I just wish that Disney would incorporate more expanded universe figures, because there's a great amount of them now that are out there.
Yeah. Well, I keep coming around to it. I don't know why they get rid of it, other than
Fresh, clean slate.
Yeah, but not a lot of people have heard about it. I guess maybe that's what they thought. Well, not a lot of everybody knows about the expanded universe. Let's get rid of it. But then they got rid of the Clone Wars too. Really, I don't know. And it reminds me of Star Trek too, in a way. I mean, with the new Discovery, they paint themselves in a corner. You know, Star Wars is a big, open, huge galaxy far, far away. You know, you don't have to stay in between
this point and
this point and this point. You know, the Old Republic, freaking awesome.
Yeah, and there's been some talk about making
and they've got video games. You know, freaking awesome. And didn't that get jettisoned too?
Yeah, so
and people want that really bad. You know, I don't know what Rian Johnson had in mind, because he's going to make his own trilogy and stuff, which I heard that's probably been shut down, maybe just done one movie. But anyway, I mean, do an Old Republic story. I mean, either in the distant past or in the far, not too distant future, but I mean, there's a lot of good stories out there. It doesn't have to be connected to Skywalker. If you want to get rid of Skywalker, you know, bring the trilogy to an end, and or have a Grand Admiral Thrawn story. I don't know. That would probably be kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think it was Obi-Wan that meets Grand Admiral Thrawn. I think it's Chancellor Valorum sends him out on a mission way out in the Outer Rim, and he meets. Well, he's not Grand Admiral Thrawn; he's just Thrawn at the time. And it's cool that that's in another book. I think it's called Outward Journey, or
oh yeah, I haven't read that.
Wayward something, and it's a really good book. I read some of it. I have a hard time sitting down and reading a book, though. I just don't have time.
Well, but people don't read it. I don't read as much as I used to. I remember when after Star Wars came out, a book by Alan Dean Foster came out called The Splinter of Mind's Eye, and it was a sequel. It actually came out, I think, before
Empire.
Return, or yeah, Empire. It was a good book. But I don't know if Lucas endorsed that one or not, like he did Heir to the Empire. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the author's name, but it was a good series of books. So I guess this episode's kind of turned into talking about canon, but we want to talk about Thrawn. I mean, the figure is a good figure, and hopefully they've come out with some new figures that are more articulated. That's what I like. And if I found a good Grand Admiral Thrawn articulated figure that's more articulated than that, I would buy it, because I just like the character. I have a lot of figures. I might have that figure. I don't know. I'd have to look. But I enjoyed the figure, the character, so I'll buy it. Even though it's expanded the universe, I'll buy it. I've got Dash Rendar and a bunch of other ones, so.
Yeah. A fun fact about Grand Admiral Thrawn, he actually has Commander Gree's helmet in his office. Commander Gree was the clone trooper that tried to kill Yoda on Kashyyyk.
Oh, really?
And he chopped his head off,
yeah.
And it's sitting in his office. There was a picture of it a while back. I don't know if it was on Rebels but it just shows that helmet, and I was like, gosh, that helmet looks really familiar. And I was rewatching the movies one day. I was like, got it.
What way he's got his helmet? Trophy.
Trying to kill a Jedi. I mean, that's pretty ballsy.
Well, he's just following orders. I don't know. But I'm not as familiar as I'd like to be with the expanded universe and with I haven't watched all of Rebels yet, so
I have a hard time with it. There's certain things like I get it's gonna be a Star Wars show, and it's just so cartoony sometimes.
It's how the rebellion started. Well, and slanted more toward kids, but then again, Solo was kind of sort of about how the rebellion started, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of weird because they have this kid cartoon, but some of it's really dark.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if kids realize that this show's. I mean, there's even some stuff in the Clone Wars animated show, and people are getting stabbed with lightsabers. And I'm like, that's kind of dark.
That's a good point. I mean, people have always said Star Wars was slanted toward kids, and I'm thinking, I don't know about
People
that.
getting their hands chopped off, electrocuted, and
yeah. I mean, the original Star Wars was supposed to be a Saturday morning cartoon. George Lucas wanted to make a Saturday morning cartoon or episodic live action, and it turned into Star Wars. But he had several chapters. Like, if I remember, he had 13 chapters, and each chapter became a movie. It all evolved, you know. So it got changed drastically. But I guess technically it was for children, but there's a lot more violence now, you know. So whenever a ship blows up, there's a sentient being in that ship that gets murdered, you know. So, but yeah, I haven't got to watch as much Rebels. I mean, I guess they do the best they can, but I just, you know, it takes place between this time and this time. You know, and Clone Wars takes place between this time and this time, and I think it'd be a great idea just to go Old Republic, you know.
Yeah, if you're gonna go either, for me, I'm thinking either Old Republic or like 20 years before the Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to see like a young Qui-Gon Jinn with like Count Dooku.
Qui-Gon's awesome.
And that's you know, I mean, you wouldn't have to cast Liam Neeson, but I mean, you can find somebody that's picks up the mannerism.
Yeah.
And Count Dooku was always one of my favorite characters, even though he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see what he was like as a Jedi.
And Darth Maul's one of my favorite characters. I'd like to see him, you know, young. I mean, if you were talking about Star Wars stories by Disney, I mean, a Qui-Gon Jinn story. I love Obi-Wan, and they talked about making one of him, but we already know Obi-Wan. I'd like to see Qui-Gon, Darth Maul.
What are you going to do with Obi-Wan? Have him in the desert for 2 hours?
Exactly. I mean, he was on Tatooine
for 18 years, just in seclusion.
Yeah, until he leaves with Luke and he gets killed on the Death Star. So, I don't know.
For me, I mean, don't get me wrong, Ewan McGregor, I'm sure you're out there.
Yeah.
And I love him to death.
Obi-Wan, if they have an adventure on Tatooine, or maybe, I guess he maybe can leave Tatooine temporarily if it looks okay. I don't know.
Yeah, and they did a scene in Rebels where I won't spoil anything, but Darth Maul comes to Tatooine, looking for Obi-Wan, and I won't say anything. No spoilers, but and it's
they would almost have to, a big chunk would have to take place on Tatooine, which, I mean, that might be okay.
I mean, I guess you could just have him going around defending Luke from Tusken Raiders, or watching over him, dealing with local, because Jedis weren't ever supposed to be soldiers. They're supposed to be keepers of the peace, you know, and just have him kind of be that lawless, because the Uncle Owen, he says, he died about the same time as your father. You know, he was. So it's kind of hard to say how you would make it seem like he's there, but he's not there, because everybody thought he was kind of a myth or a legend.
Well, I mean, in Star Wars, Obi-Wan's. I mean, we now know that he's watching over Luke Skywalker, but how close is he watching him? Because you really don't know that about that until the prequels, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyway, if they make an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie and it's as good as Solo or Rogue One,
I'll go see it.
But don't.
My thing is, I don't see anyone else playing Obi-Wan.
I've heard it's on hold. Like, I think I've heard all the movies except for Episode 9's on hold. So that's a good step. Rethink this. Go Old Republic. Just do it. You know.
There's so much.
If you want a Star Wars story, yeah, or do a Dash Rendar movie, or I mean,
and Dash is a little hard though, because they made a video game,
and it made me think of Han Solo too.
Yeah,
he's like a Han Solo type. So, that probably wasn't a good idea. So.
But Old Republic, I mean, you have so much content. There's just, I mean, there's now 3 Old Republic video games.
Yeah.
And then there's just tons of lore behind it.
Yeah.
Actually, some of the most rare Star Wars figures to collect are Old Republic figures, oddly enough.
I'd heard about a Yoda story. You know, but I don't know, just step away from all those characters and do a Star Wars story that doesn't have all those characters that we know. I mean, you still put a Star Wars story at the at the end of the title. So I don't know, but what's going on now is not necessarily working that great.
And I hear Disney's gonna slow the wheels on the bus, kind of.
Yeah.
They're not gonna make movies as fast, and they're gonna, I guess, put a little bit more time into it. And I appreciate that a little bit more as a fan, because I'm tired of them pumping out, no offense, Disney, but crap.
Yeah, well, you give yourself a deadline, which is good to have a deadline, but you have all these deadlines, and the pressure's on, and there's always something unforeseen comes up, and I just don't think that's wise to have just come out and say, we're going to have a new movie every year. Yeah, well, you want a good movie every time, so I wouldn't mess with.
I mean, you have to almost weigh out. Do you want to have a Star Wars movie every year that may be good, maybe bad, or do you want to have a Star Wars movie every 3 to 4 years?
Yeah.
That's
well, I think there was some arrogance there. They if it says Star Wars on it, it's going to be a success, and
not always the case.
No, it's not always the truth. I mean,
I don't want to say anything bad. I know you love your Star Trek, but Star Trek 4 for me almost wrecked Star Trek franchise with the darn whales.
Yeah, it was bad. So I mean, yeah, I'm honest about it. So if you were to take
I'm sure I'm
a
about
good
to get
have a good movie every 2 years, that's better, you know. But you know, Disney paid a lot of money for Lucasfilm, and they want their money back as fast as possible so they can start making profit. I'm sure that's what it is. Okay, well, you had anything else to add? We got off subject there.
No. Well, I mean, we can save for the next video. I got something I want to talk about in the next one.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.